to better describe some of the tenets of web scale, right? When these web companies like Google, Facebook, when they need infrastructure that couldn't support their business requirements, in other words, when they needed infrastructure other than SAN, because SAN was no good, they realized that legacy infrastructure was a poor fit. Say over time, these companies developed an alternative approach to IT that allowed them to get past all of the limitations of legacy infrastructure, right? So they wanted things like fractional consumption, no single point of failure, distributed everything, always on systems, right? And they used unbranded x86 servers. In the case of AWS, they just started manufacturing all of their own stuff, right? But what do they use? They use a software layer that sits on top of that commodity hardware, all of which contributes to the sum total of resources in that cloud. Then they can carve it up. And they use automation in a lot of ways to make sure that they eliminate user error and things like that. So it's all of this stuff pulled together. Now, when we compare this directly to the architecture of three-tier, we start to see some of the big differences, right? And I refer to this process as decomplexification. That's my word, by the way. I made that up. You can use it if you want. You don't have to pay me royalties to use my word. That's okay. But the Nutanix Cloud Platform addresses that cost and complexity associated with the traditional three-tier data center infrastructure that you see on the left, right? And there's nowadays there's so little value to building infrastructure with that legacy mindset, right? So what did you have to do? If you continue to do this, you've got your server vendor, you got your SAN vendor, you've got your storage network vendor, you got your virtualization vendor. How long does it take to build this up? Well, I can tell you that it takes weeks or months to design it, to procure it, to deploy it, to provision infrastructure, right? That piece of it is very important to us, and we refer to that as time to value. Time to value is a very important concept, and we look at that and we say, what is time to value? How do we reduce time to value, right? Time to value is the time it takes for us to get a thing and realize the value of that thing. And when there were many cases where I was building out complex infrastructures as an engineer, whether with Nutanix or I'm sorry, whether with Citrix or with a partner. And it would take months to build all of it out. You got to build it out. You got to patch it. You've got all these different places to go for support. It's difficult. It's time consuming. It doesn't scale well. That was the other thing, right? So with Nutanix, fail fast, scale easily, scale in a linear way. We'll talk a little bit more about how that occurs as we go on. But on the right-hand side of this image, or of this slide, what you have is infrastructure that's in an hour, it's ready to use. That's time to value. You can start small. You can scale linearly, as I mentioned, right? There's no guesswork behind scaling Nutanix. There's no guesswork behind sizing Nutanix. It's not this weird art form like it used to be with three-tier. Well, how much of a thing do I need? Well, I don't know. When am I going to run out of space with this thing? If I need another server, can I add another server? If I add another server, am I going over capacity for just in case? At what point do I have to add a whole nother storage array? And am I going to have to add it in pairs? And then how much am I going to have? And when am I going to use? You see, it's all guesswork. With Nutanix, it's not guesswork. Okay, but why should you care about all this? Why should you care about modern infrastructure? One of the main reasons is you have the opportunity, and honestly, for quite a while now, a decade or so, you've had the opportunity to unlock yourself from three-tier and the reliance on a legacy hypervisor. And that's what we're really talking about today. Not only unlock yourself from the legacy hypervisor, but the poor support that comes with it, inevitably, and the attitude that comes from knowing you're stuck with them, right? So who is the new them? Who is it that you're stuck with? Well, it's Broadcom, right? At least they think that you're stuck with them. Broadcom has purchased one of the most beloved software companies. And even though I compete with VMware, I've been competing with VMware for several years, whether at Nutanix or whether at Citrix. The fact is, they got good software, right? They gave us virtualization, and it changed everything. And that's awesome. And they kept that up, and that's great. But you are not locked into that, right? Broadcom thinks you are, but make no mistake, you are not locked into that. So after all of these things, after all of the industry analysts said, oh, this and such is going to happen, Dana touched on a few of the things that actually have come to fruition as a result of the Broadcom acquisition of VMware. And so customers, many of you perhaps, are looking for alternatives. Customers want to see, or customers have seen that what the analysts predicted are actually coming true. Oftentimes, cloud is a first choice as an alternative to Broadcom and VMware. But native public cloud, it can be tricky. What if you want to stay on-prem? What if you want to be partially on-prem and partially in the cloud? What infrastructure lends itself to that, right? And again, Broadcom is under the impression that you're stuck with them. So what are you doing? What can you do? What do some of the alternatives look like? Well, you can keep writing that check to Broadcom. That's okay. That'll work. You could stay on that. You can move to public cloud. In many cases, though, what is public cloud, right? It's another silo. It's another silo of technology. It requires its own skill sets. What you know about legacy on-prem infrastructure does not translate to public cloud. These are just two entirely different entities, and it's very difficult to connect these things seamlessly if you have 3-tier and you want to be in public cloud or have a combination there in a hybrid cloud, right? Web scale, that's a nice choice, of course, especially when you consider the cost comparison, the ease of deployment, the ease of management, the extensibility to cloud, right? It starts to become a little more of a favorable option. But this is what Broadcom expects from you, okay? What innovation has recently come from 3-tier, right? How has 2 decades of 3-tier refresh cycles benefited your business? You have to ask yourself that, right? If you use the same old thinking, you get the same old results. So how do you break out of that, right? Well, there's a lot more impetus now than there was in the past with the acquisition. So what do we bring? Well, since 2012, and we started the company in 2009, we went to market in 2012. Nutanix has sort of semi-quietly been building this cloud platform. I say quietly because the fact is a lot of customers don't even know that we exist. Even after 10 years in the business, many customers don't know that we exist. Now, Choice recognized Nutanix as value way back in 2013 at VMware World or VMworld. By 2014, Choice was a partner of Nutanix and has been an amazing partner ever since. So those of you who are on this call, you were invited here by Choice. They're a fantastic partner, and they have been with us for a very long time. Now, a modern infrastructure requires a modern platform. That's what we have here, a platform that has all of the features and all of the functions that you need to run the business while the business grows and innovates. Nutanix brings all of this to our customers, regardless of the workload, regardless of the data location. And I like to say what we do on-prem, we do in cloud. We do anywhere. What we do in on-prem, we do on the edge. We do in the cloud. We do on a service provider platform, right? Portable licensing, portable workloads, common management. I'm gonna emphasize the common platform, common management over and over again as we go along.